You've felt it. You're sitting in a quiet room, reading or working, and suddenly something shifts. You look up. Nobody is there. But the feeling was real. Something was watching you. It happens in the dark. It happens in empty hallways. It happens when you're alone in a building that has gone too quiet. It happens outside, when the night feels wrong in a way you can't put a name to. And it happens when someone actually is watching you. You feel it before you see it. You turn, and there they are, looking directly at you. This feeling is one of the strangest experiences the human brain produces. It arrives without evidence. It convinces you of something before your eyes have confirmed it. It is almost impossible to shake once it starts. The question is whether it's real. Your brain has an entire system devoted to eyes. Not just seeing with eyes, detecting eyes, being detected by eyes. Your brain tracks gaze the way it tracks almost nothing else, with speed, with precision, with dedicated neural architecture that no other category of information receives. There is a region in the back of the brain called the superior temporal sulcus. It fires when you perceive biological motion, a person walking, a hand reaching, a face turning. But it has a particularly strong response to one specific thing: direct gaze. Someone looking at you. Not at the wall behind you, not at the floor, at you specifically. Researchers have found that the brain registers direct eye contact differently from averted gaze, even when the difference is only a few degrees of angle. The cells that respond to direct gaze fire faster and with greater intensity. The brain treats being looked at as a distinct category of experience, something requiring immediate attention, separate from everything else in the visual field. This is not a learned behavior. It is not a cultural convention. It is hardwired into the architecture of the brain itself. Newborns show a preference for faces with direct gaze within hours of birth. The system is online before you could possibly have learned what eyes mean. It makes evolutionary sense. For most of human history, direct gaze meant one of two things. Something was sizing you up as competition, or something was deciding whether you were prey. Either way, you needed to respond. The humans who noticed, who felt the gaze before they confirmed it, who looked up from the fire when something at the edge of the dark shifted, those people had a significant advantage over those who didn't. The cost of missing it was death. The ones who survived were the sensitive ones. The ones who startled at the sense of attention. The ones who scanned the darkness for a watcher without being entirely sure why. Those people became your ancestors. And over hundreds of thousands of years, that sensitivity compounded into something reflexive, into something below conscious thought, into the sensation you have right now when a room goes quiet and you can't entirely dismiss the idea that something in it is paying attention. In the 1990s, a researcher named Rupert Sheldrake ran a series of experiments on the feeling of being stared at. His subjects sat with their backs to a window, unable to see outside. Observers behind the glass would either stare directly at them or look away at random intervals. Subjects were asked to guess which was happening. The results hovered near chance. If you're looking for telepathy, the data doesn't support it. But the full picture is more complicated. When other researchers measured physiological responses, galvanic skin conductance, a measure of subtle arousal below conscious awareness, they found something more consistent. Small, repeated changes in the body's stress response occurred when subjects were stared at from behind, even when subjects reported feeling nothing unusual. The body was registering something the conscious mind wasn't processing. The effect is small. The mechanism is not agreed upon, but the consistency across independent replications has kept researchers returning to it, not as evidence of psychic ability, but as a genuine question about whether the nervous system can detect social attention through channels that don't involve direct perception. The honest answer is that nobody knows yet. What is less controversial is what happens when you can see the person. Your peripheral vision is extraordinarily sensitive to gaze direction. At the outer edges of your visual field, far beyond where you can recognize a face or read an expression, you can still detect whether a face is oriented toward you or away from you. The directional signal travels faster than your conscious processing. By the time the feeling of being watched reaches your awareness and you turn to confirm it, your visual system has already done the work. The feeling arrives before the proof. The turning is not discovery, it is confirmation of something your brain concluded milliseconds earlier. This is why, in public spaces, you turn and find someone already looking away. They were watching you. Your peripheral vision caught the angle of their face. Your brain processed it below awareness and surfaced the result as a feeling with no clear source. By the time you moved, they shifted, but the signal had already arrived. The feeling was real, it was just faster than the explanation. There is another system at work here, one that is considerably less accurate. Psychologists call it hyperactive agency detection. The brain is built to find agents, things with intentions, things that can act, things that might be watching, and it is not calibrated for precision. It is calibrated for caution, missing a real agent, a predator in the shadows, a threat in the dark could be fatal. A false positive sensing a watcher that isn't there costs almost nothing. You feel afraid, you move, you survive, you feel foolish later. So the system runs hot. It finds agents in shadows. It reads intention into sounds that don't have any. It populates empty rooms with a sense of presence. It generates the feeling of being observed in spaces that are demonstrably, provably empty. This is not a malfunction. It is the system working exactly as it evolved to work. The alarm is deliberately oversensitive. The false positives are the acceptable cost of staying alive. And evolution has no mechanism for correcting this, because a brain that produces too many false positives still survives. A brain that produces too many false negatives doesn't. The feeling intensifies under specific conditions. Darkness is the primary trigger. When visual information disappears, the brain doesn't default to safety, it defaults to threat. It fills the absence of evidence with the possibility of danger. Perception falls short, and imagination steps in to cover the gap. Sleep deprivation amplifies threat detection across the board. Stress narrows attention and elevates vigilance. Isolation, being alone in an unfamiliar space, or a space that is too large and too quiet, pushes the system further toward alarm. Studies have found that people who score higher on measures of paranoid ideation experience the feeling of being observed more intensely and more frequently, not because the world is more threatening to them, but because their threat detection system is running at a higher baseline. The same mechanism, the same system, a different threshold. Familiarity is the counterweight. In spaces you know well, around people you trust, in conditions that have been consistently safe, the monitoring continues, but the alarming quiets. The brain doesn't turn the system off. It just stops escalating. Here is what makes this experience genuinely hard to reason your way out of. The feeling of being watched doesn't arrive as a guess, it arrives as knowledge. It carries a certainty that your rational mind struggles to override, even when you've looked, even when the room is empty, even when you know with full conscious awareness that you are alone. Because the system generating that certainty is older than your reasoning brain. It doesn't take evidence the way your conscious mind does. It doesn't update cleanly. It generates the alarm and leaves it to you to decide what to do with it. Sometimes you can dismiss it, sometimes you can't. That sensation, the one that persists after you've checked, is one of the oldest experiences in the human nervous system. It appears in every culture, every era, every environment that humans have ever inhabited. Ancient religious traditions built entire theologies around it. The feeling of being seen by something vast and attentive beyond the visible world. Every tradition that has ever grappled with darkness has grappled with this feeling. Because every nervous system that has ever existed in the dark has felt it. Your brain has not changed enough since your ancestors needed this system to survive. The same architecture is still running, still scanning, still waiting for something at the edge of perception to move. The room might be empty, but something in you is not entirely sure. And something in you is right to keep looking.